wanted to see if you could give us some details on just how dang spectacular this Mavs defense has been through the first 2 games of this series.
Yeah, so there's a stat called quantified shot quality, and you're going to need to bust out your glasses and calculator for this one. But basically, it is a one-number metric that just says, like, if the average player takes a shot from this spot on the floor with the nearest defender being this many feet away and with this many seconds left on the shot clock, basically like gauging the difficulty of the shot and the situation, then they're going to shoot this percentage. The Jazz's expected effective field goal percentage based on that metric is worse than every other team that's in the playoffs right now, which means the Mavs are forcing, in Utah's opinion, the worst shots, but in Mavs fans' opinion, the best kinds of shots. Those are like shots off the dribble, long twos, late in the shot clock. You know, they're not giving the Jazz a lot of stuff at the rim or, you know, from corners, especially, you know, beyond the three-point line or even above the break too, but Dallas is forcing a lot of tough contested shots late in the shot clock, and Utah, despite hitting a lot of those, especially in Game 2, they've just not been able to hit enough of them. I mean, threes are worth more than twos, like Jason Kidd said, and Utah, you know, three-point shot is their bread and butter. They take more than 40 of them a game, but they have not been able to take more than like 25 in either of these games so far, so really, really well done by the Mavs.
Defense isn't always the sexiest thing to talk about, but the way that they have played in these first 2 games gives you a lot of confidence that hopefully going forward in the rest of the series, they can continue to play that way. What, from a either rotation standpoint, scrambling, what is the 1 or 2 things that they are doing most effectively to see them put the Jazz in those kinds of positions to shoot those kinds of numbers that they have been so far?
Well, I think number 1 is outside of the third quarter of Game 1, they've done a really, really good job of keeping Donovan Mitchell out of the lane. You know, in the third quarter in that game, I think he scored 19 points, was just breaking everybody down. But, you know, even in the first half in Game 2, I think he had 21 or 22 points at halftime. A lot of it was on mid-range pull-up jump shots, floaters, runners, you know, tough shots. They've done a really good job of just keeping him, fencing off the paint and keeping him out of there. And then also, you know, just running guys off the line. They're scrambling like crazy. They are making sure, you know, even if, you know, if I'm Spencer Dinwiddie and my man is Bogdanovich and he catches a pass, I'm going to do whatever I can to run him off the line. And then I'm going to trust that Dorian Finney-Smith or Reggie Bullock or Jalen Brunson is going to have my back and get a hand in Bogdanovich's face so that he's not getting an open 18-footer, you know. So they've done a really good job of helping and then helping the helper and then rotating and communicating and everything. But the one thing, you know, I'm sure we're about to talk about Luka, but as Luka comes back, you know, whether it's Game 3, 4, 5, whenever, Utah's probably going to start targeting him, I would think, in pick and rolls, especially with Donovan Mitchell. And so far in this series, they haven't really had anyone to target. You know, they go out like Davis Bertans every now and then, sometimes Spencer Dinwiddie. But for the most part, the Mavs have always had 2 or 3 or 4 really good defenders on the floor that can take those, you know, switches and handle those matchups. And I'll be really interested to see as Luka comes back, you know, does the Utah offensive game plan shift focus to just constantly go at him as much as possible, and hopefully, you know, hopefully not take advantage of that, but in their case, hopefully take advantage of that.
Bobby Karalla, DallasMavericks.com, with us here in the Nosebleed Seats via the Diamond Factory fan hotline. What about the idea that this Mavericks offense just doesn't turn the ball over anymore? Like, how is that something that's pretty sustainable, at least through the rest of this series?
Well, it was only the 5th time ever that they had 3 turnovers in a game, which is pretty insane. Playoff record for the team. You know, Spencer Dinwiddie had all 3, and they all came in the first half, and 2 of them came like in the first 3 minutes of the game. So they played almost 45 minutes of perfect basketball. And, you know, turnovers are generally low across the league, especially among teams that play a lot of isolation. Like Luka's always going one-on-one, and you're rarely going to turn it over in those situations. But in Game 2, it was a lot of drive and kick and, you know, swinging it around the perimeter. The Mavs were moving the ball quite a bit. And so for them to pass as often as they did in Game 2 and never have any ones that just, you know, you think a guy's going to be there and he's not, or Utah jumps a passing lane, or you commit an offensive foul on a drive to the basket. You know, they just played so clean, and I'm not sure that will sustain itself to that degree. But in Game 1, I think they only committed, 7 or 8, and so, you know, their turnovers have been low throughout the entire series, and turnovers are possession of the ball, and live ball turnovers, usually end up in a dunk or a three the other way. So if you can keep those down, especially below 10, I mean, you're giving yourself a chance to win every single game because Utah's just not getting many easy baskets.
Bobby Karalla of Mavs.com joining us right here on the Diamond Factory Hotline right here on the Nosebleed Seats on 105 through the Fan. You started to mention it. Luka Doncic listed as questionable for the first time in this series as he's dealing with the left calf strain. Obviously, we know how he would change the trajectory of this series once he comes back. But what specific one or two things that will improve the most once he does return that will give Utah the most problems when he's introduced to this series?
Well, I'm actually going to start with defense with Luka, which is very surprising. I think. But, Bogdanovich for Utah has had so much success posting up Brunson and working Brunson and Dinwiddie kind of in the mid-range area because he's a big, strong guy, and Luka usually guards him. And, Luka's bigger and Luka's stronger. And so that element of the Jazz's offense could really kind of be nullified if Luka comes back and is his same physical, strong self. Offensively, obviously, it's going to have a huge boost. It's going to, create all sorts of extra shots, not only for Reggie Bullock and Dorian Finney-Smith, but also for Dwight Powell, who's kind of been neutralized in the series because Dinwiddie and Brunson are, more kind of scoring-minded than they are lob passers. But also, the most important, I think, aspect of having Luka back is not only he's going to get double teams and everything, but it means you're going to bring Spencer Dinwiddie off the bench, and you're not going to have to eke out 1 or 2 minutes from guys like Trey Burke or Josh Green who, haven't been as effective in this series. And so, suddenly you go from playing like a 5.5-man rotation for an entire half of a playoff game to having, a legit sixth man in Dinwiddie. And you can always have two playmakers on the floor and, obviously more shooting, more scoring, and more size on the defensive glass too. So, Luka coming back is just going to help them in every single way imaginable as long as he's able to, play and move and shoot and stuff like he's been able to lately and not, limited really in any way, hopefully because of that injury.
So we're on the heels of Brunson and Kleber being the headliners for Game 2's victory. Is there any other player that you feel like has been, deserving of some high praise through the first 2 games of this series?
Yeah, his offensive numbers have been pretty modest, but Reggie Bullock has been busting his tail in both games so far. And, it almost hasn't even really shown up in the box score because Dorian Finney-Smith is the one that's guarding Donovan Mitchell so often. But, you look at Game 2, Mike Conley scored 0 points, and Reggie Bullock is guarding him most of the time. And Conley, outside of a couple shots in the fourth quarter of Game 1, largely has not been much of a factor in this series. And he's been a guy over the years that has absolutely just brutalized the Mavs, even since joining the Jazz last year and the year before. He's just been so good for them. So Bullock's defense has been huge, and, it was great to see Maxey score, obviously, but Dwight Powell defensively, he doesn't necessarily have the size to contend with Gobert the way that other players do around the league. That's well known. But in my opinion, Dwight has been very effective in this series despite not scoring very often. His plus-minus in both games has been positive, and take that for what it's worth because he is playing limited minutes right now. But, he's not getting pulverized the way that some people might have, feared would be the case. So the fact that they're able to not only hold even but win those Dwight minutes at the start of each half has been super-duper important because it means that, Maxey or these other guys can just come in, don't have to play 45 minutes. They can just play 32 minutes and stay fresher throughout the game, especially in the fourth quarter whenever it matters the most.
Bobby, what type of adjustments do you feel like the Jazz will be making, if any, after the 3-point bonanza that took place the other night?
Man, I don't know. It's going to be tough. If Luka comes back, obviously it's like a totally new series, but if he's out, I think the only adjustment that they can make is either switch everything, which is, asking a lot of Gobert, having him chase around those guards all over the place, or, play with a little more kind of pride and disposition on defense. Donovan Mitchell especially, he's obviously a spectacular player, but he was the one that was guarding Brunson and Dinwiddie throughout most of the fourth quarter, and those guys were able to get wherever they wanted to go. And so if Utah is able to, get guys out there, they can stay in front of Dinwiddie and Brunson, then that could be an issue. I thought they found a little bit of something toward the end of the game whenever they checked Conley out of the game and didn't replace him with Jordan Clarkson, but instead with Daniel House. So there was only one guard, 3 wings, and Gobert on the floor. So there was a lot of size, a lot of length, versatility, and all that, and shooting too. So I thought that was maybe a little something. Maybe those 5 guys play a little more, but I don't know. It feels like defensively the Mavs have done an incredible job, and so the Jazz just have to pretty much just keep making really, really tough shots. And if they can't stay in front of the Mavs, this is going to be a pretty smooth series, I think, for the guards.
And then before we let you go, Bobby, I'm just curious what your confidence meter is in this team going into Utah with that type of hostile playoff crowd, a Mavericks team that, most of the playoff experience is a crowdless bubble and a limited crowd last year in the playoffs. This is going to be a whole new test for them on the road, and I'm curious how confident you are that they will be able to silence that crowd.
Yeah, it is going to be loud. It is going to be super loud, and they got the color-coordinated shirts and everything out there, so it's going to be pretty primal, I think. But, not that this is equal to playing in the playoffs, but, the Luka-less Mavs played in Utah on Christmas. It was a pretty rowdy crowd that day, so they have a little experience there. But, yeah, obviously you want Luka back first and foremost. I think if he's out there, that'll just galvanize everyone's spirits a little bit, but it's going to be very tough. Utah plays really well at home, obviously elevation and the noise and all that stuff, role players' confidence and everything. But, Jalen Brunson is never rattled. He never gets shaken. And so if he's going to keep going for 25, 30, 40 points in these games, it doesn't matter where you're playing. That guy's ready to ball out. So, even though the Mavs may be relatively inexperienced, especially on the road in the playoffs, they're still led by a cold-blooded killer with or without Luka. And if Luka's back, that's good because that means they got an extra one. So I feel good. But, you got to get off to a strong start just like you did in games 1 and 2. Playing from ahead is way better than playing from behind, especially when you're on the road.